Hello everybody, welcome back to Position Zero. In today's video, we will be doing content creators versus 400 ELO. This is the game. Today we played the Google En Passant bot, so yeah, let's get right into it. We begin with E4 and C5, the Sicilian defense, and then we get the Sicilian defense Smith Morrow Gambit. This gambit is a very common Sicilian, happens very common in Sicilian games. So pawn takes on d4, queen takes, and the knight immediately comes out attacking the queen. Now at this point I retreat the queen to a4, and mysteriously the Google En Passant bot decides to go a5. Now a5 is an interesting move. Of course the queen is protected by the knight on c6, as you can see right here. However, it's not a typical move you would play. It's probably better to develop your knight or pawns into the game early on. So I take, which is the top engine move, and after knight takes, I develop my knight on c3. Now, in this position, we get d6. I don't particularly like the move d6. I usually like pushing my pawns 2 squares to begin with, such as e5 or d5 maybe. But d5 in this case would hang the pawn, but I just like pushing my pawns 2 squares rather than one, but nothing's wrong with the move d6. Then we get the move knight to f4. Knight to f4 is simply developing the knight. And then we get the move h5. h5 is the inaccuracy. h5 doesn't actually really do anything. There's no bishop you're blocking, and yeah, it's just kind of a waste of the move pushing the pawn to the side of the board. At this point, I played a move bishop to e3. It wasn't the best move in the position, however, it was ranked as an excellent move overall. After this, we get to move bishop d7, and then I do the move pawn to h3, which is an inaccuracy. The idea of pawn to h3 was preventing future stuff with this bishop. If my arrow animations are a bit weird, I'm doing this on a different computer. That's probably why. But I will do it on my computer I usually record videos on tomorrow. After this, we get to move knight to h6. Now, knight to h6 is a weird move. It's ranked as the mistake by Stockfish18. And the reason I think it's marked as a mistake because it's literally a pointless move. It doesn't add anything to the position, and using this knight as an anchor to the side of the board is relatively useless right now in this position. And after the move bishop to d3, which it's just the move I played, I just wanted my bishops and knights together. And then we get the move b6. Now b6 does create some pawn structure, and it does something. But the best move in this position was for black was pawn to e6. Okay. Or bishop to e6. I'm not sure. After this we get the move castles. Nothing's wrong with castling. I love castling. I'm glad it's part of chess. And we get the move b8. Now rook to b8 is a fantastic move. Now who knows why? I thought rook to c8 would be better, but I'm not Stockfish18. I wouldn't know. Rook to e1 was the move I played, and the position is still heavily in white's favor. However, it's kind of evening out a bit more. We get the move rook to g8, and that was an inaccuracy. Rook to g8 actually does nothing. And if anything, it actually limits the knight from coming back for safety. So now all of a sudden, the evenness of the game is gone again. But then I played a move pawn to a4. Now pawn to a4, I don't know why I played pawn to a4. It was probably because this bishop on d7, but the bishop on d7 didn't actually control, have any sort of control in the game, and it couldn't really do anything. The best piece right now in black's position is probably the rook and bishop, maybe the knight, of course, on a5, but that's about it. Next, we get the move pawn to g5, which was ranked the best move by Stockfish18. Now, the thing about pawn to g5, it's just hanging a pawn. And that's exactly what I do. But apparently it's best to take with the bishop. But, so, this is why I get confused when Stockfish, or like, chess.com ranks this as the best move. Because all I see is hanging a knight. I don't really see the purpose of this move. But the best move in the position, I'm not Stockfish. Stockfish, I couldn't say. Knight takes, and then we get the move rook to c8. Now, this is the move I would do if I was black, but black's rook was already in the best position it could be as of that point, I believe. Now, the overall thing about the Google en passant bot is that it's very inconsistent. Like, it's terribly inconsistent. And that's why it does the best move at some points, and then inaccuracies and mistakes on the others. Now, the following moves from the Google en passant bot are quite devastating. Rook to d1 was me, which is already a mistake. And then we get the move rook takes knight on c3. And then I take back with the pawn. Now, I was scared because I thought a 1200 bot played like a brilliant move. I thought there was some reasoning behind this that I couldn't find. But this simply trades the rook for the knight. There's nothing else that happens in this position, and it's quite weird why the bot would do that in the first place. But that's what happened. Pawn takes, and we get with the move pawn to f5. I take, but the best move was bishop to e2. Afterwards, we get to move bishop to g7. Now, bishop g7 is an inaccuracy overall. It doesn't actually really accomplish anything. It's just kind of a move. There's not much more to say for it. Knight to e4 simply sets back the knight. That was my idea. Too much pressure with the bishop and rook, and I was concerned, so I wanted one more piece back to go into a defensive more position. Now, we have the move bishop takes on a4. Now, it was just a hanging pawn, but this move didn't actually do anything. And if anything, we have the opportunity to strike and attack. And yeah, but of course, I played a move rook to a1. It would be a fork if there wasn't a pawn if the pawn wasn't protecting the knight. So of course the bishop moves out of the way, looking at a knight trying to take down this attack. However, I finally played the best move in the position, which is bishop takes h6, which is taking the knight. The bishop does not take back, but instead takes the knight on e4. I take that with the rook, and black takes that with the knight. I mean, with the bishop. I don't even know what I'm saying. Now we're in almost an endgame. We're 21 moves into this game. About 20 moves of this game are just me being pretty bad at chess, to say the least. But we get to move rook to h4. Now I like to move rook to h4 simply because I win the pawn. Bishop goes to h7. And now I take the pawn. You thought something was going to happen, didn't you? Bishop takes on c3. Now something will happen soon, just not yet. I move my rook out of the way, now attacking the knight and the bishop. Of course, the knight's defended, but that's besides the point. Bishop to f6. Again, the Google en passant bot plays the best move in the position. And this is partially why I'm so inconsistent with this bot. At some points, I'm doing really good, and some other points, I'm just making inaccuracy after inaccuracy. And at this point, I decide to give checks because I have no idea what I'm doing, and I just want to delay at this point. d8, pawn to g4, bishop to e5, and pawn to f3. My idea was if I made an all white square like pawn structure, then only the bishop could infiltrate, and the bishop can't do anything on its own. But it probably would have been better if I made an all black squared pawn structure in the first place, because that way the bishop would be limited, and so would the rook, because all of the pawns would naturally defend each other. And on top of that, I'm up 3 points of material, so if the rook somehow tries to enter like this and get down to the third, second, and first rank, then I can always bring my bishop and rook in to prevent it from winning pawns. King to c8. It was an excellent move, but I don't know why they played it. Maybe they saw something coming, who knows. I give more checks because I'm confused at what I'm even doing. And at this point, I really wanted to get my rook involved with this basically open file. However, the black bishop controlled the square, so I was unable to actually do anything on c3. But then we get to move rook to a4. Now, at this point of the game, it's a lot of stalling, so I'm gonna start speeding it up a little bit. Knight to c6, bishop c4, and pawn attacks the bishop. Bishop takes, which is obviously the best move. Black gave a free pawn. And knight goes to a5. Now at this point, black should probably bring the rook in. That's what I would do as black. And that's what the top engine move. But of course, like black does, I play e4 with my bishop, and black actually does the best move. But it's better late than never. Pawn pushes, and now I'm threatening to promote a pawn. Nearly. Because I have my rook and bishop supporting. Bishop f4 attacks the pawn, but I simply pushing my pawn away from the attack of the bishop. The bishop begins checking because it's concerned and has no idea what it's doing. It might want to bring its rook back to prevent these pawns from promoting now, but yeah. And at this point, I'm nearly up 7 points of material, according to the eval bar, even though I'm realistically up 4. And we get to move king to g2. Now, I actually spent a long time on the move king to g2, because one thing as a 400 elo that I'm trying to get better at is knowing what king moves delay a checkmate or delay the opponent from giving constant checks and preventing you from promoting or giving a checkmate. So finding these moves are good. This move is simply the best move because obviously the bishop can't check now. And this rook can't take this pawn because the white bishop is now defending that pawn. King to c7 is an excellent move, but I'm not really sure what the goal of that move is. And now the pawn pushes, the rook comes in. And I almost made a blunder here by going, it wouldn't be a blunder, but I almost made the move rook to h8. Because I thought this king was on the c8 square. So I thought that move would work. If the king was on the c8 square, that move would be like stunning and beautiful. But unfortunately it wasn't. But I caught on to myself and did the best move, which was simply defending the pawn. Now he did the move knight to c6. That simply accomplishes nothing. And after bishop goes to d5, I simply promote the pawn. After 4 or so moves. However, now I should probably bring the bishop down to stop this pawn from promoting. However, instead, I'm actually very proud of my next move. Oh, well, not next move. Black went d4, and I went queen to g3. This was the move I was proud of because I actually managed to spot, which might have been the only safe check in the position. So I was happy. King to b7. An inaccuracy, of course, because now there's a forced mate in 9. However, the game ends in about 38 moves, which is insane. But now it's time for the speedrun part of this game. Queen to e5, knight takes the free pawn, and now I begin the checking process. And I sack my rook for the bishop, just so he has only the knight left. However, I actually don't stop this pawn. So I take it with my queen to stop it instead. I should have brought my bishop down earlier, but that was a mistake I didn't do. So instead I took it with my queen. Obviously, I'm only up 3 pawns after black takes. But it doesn't matter because this knight, it's not really going to do anything against 3 pawns and a bishop. And the king can't come back fast enough. So I push my pawn on f6. Black begins checking, trying to delay, but after I play the best move in the position, g3, this pawn simply promotes. Now, at this point, it's kind of embarrassing for me because this game should have ended in less than 10 moves. But I don't know. Like, I can checkmate with a queen and rook, but I can checkmate with a queen and rook. I can checkmate with a queen by itself. And I can checkmate with a rook by itself. But I don't know how to coordinate a queen and another piece unless it's a queen or a rook. So, I couldn't figure out how to checkmate for so long, and I was like, I'm just wasting time. I don't know what I'm doing. So at this point, I just sacrifice my bishop so I don't actually accidentally stalemate. He takes, and then I just promote my pawn to a queen. And by this point, I finish off the game in about 4 moves with queen to d2 checkmate. That's all. Thank you.